The Rouse Company has emerged in recent years as one of America's foremost developers. The Fanueil Hall Marketplace in Boston, the Harbor Place project in Baltimore, both revived and revitalized the downtown sections of those cities and are well known to people in all parts of America. The new city of Columbia, Maryland, is undoubtedly the most successful and admired planned city of our time, and these are just three of the many projects that the Rouse Company has been responsible for in recent years. Our speaker today is an architect and city planner who has been with the Rouse Company for 20 years. For 7 of those years, Michael Spear was general manager of the Columbia project there in Maryland. For the next 8 years, he was executive vice president for development and responsible for all of the Rouse Company's development and consulting activities across this country. He has been president of the Rouse Company since 1986. He is a member of several professional organizations and lectures widely in urban planning and in architectural design as it affects urban planning in universities around our country. He is in Portland, of course, on a very special occasion for the city and for all of us who live here. Yesterday was a happy day in the history of Portland as we witnessed the groundbreaking of the Pioneer Place project, a project that we have all been eagerly awaiting for many years now, and it's wonderful to have it underway. He is with us today to talk about that project and the impact that it promises to have on Portland. His topic, pioneering in downtown Portland. Please welcome Michael Spear.
Thank you. There are very few audiences that intimidate me, and an audience of business people usually doesn't, but to know that there are students here. It's a privilege to have this opportunity, and I suspect in many respects it feels sort of like a reward for finally having had the groundbreaking. I know I certainly have been treated differently since the groundbreaking. My typical format for coming here would be to arrive in an evening, and then Pat LaCrosse would get me up and beat me up and run me up Terwilliger Hill early in the morning, and then they would usually beat me all day, and then finally he'd get down to the toughest negotiating point about 10 o'clock the next night, which of course was 1 a.m. in the morning my time. But this time, after the groundbreaking, they were good enough to send me up to Mount Hood, relax me, send me down the slopes, let me sleep late, and come to chat with you all. So I hope that's a sign of things to come. For those of you all who know me, and I guess seeing this larger crowd, most of you don't, but some of you do, I think that you know that I'm an unabashed fan of the city of Portland. And in the 30 minutes which I've been given, what I'd like to do is to share with you all why the Rouse Company came to Portland, what we found when we came to this city of yours, and also briefly to share with you what I think you all will find when we finally open Pioneer Place in approximately 2 years. First, what brought us to Portland. The Rouse Company has been in the development business now for approximately 30 years. While we have in recent years become best known for our urban projects, the fact is that 58 of the 71 retail properties which we own and operate are indeed located not in the cities but in the suburbs. In fact, the Rouse Company was one of the pioneers of the suburban regional shopping center. And for the first 20 years of our history, we, as many other local and regional and national developers, in effect built our companies by capitalizing on the flight of people and retailers from the central city to the suburbs. And spurred on by massive federal taxing policy, highway programs, the urge to own homes following the Second World War, the 50s and 1960s saw the decline of many central cities across this country, and possibly the most noticeable aspect of that decline was in downtown retailing, and downtown as the heart of retailing for the urban area. In the mid-1970s, however, the Rouse Company came to believe that there was being left behind, so to speak, in the downtowns, an untapped market, a market which was not indeed incompatible with the suburban shopping center. The people still working in the downtown was an obvious market for shopping in downtown. as were the people who would be visiting the downtown for either business or pleasure. But we also believed, and had evidence in some work that we had done, that there was still, in fact, an emotional attachment to the downtown on the part of many of the people who, in fact, had left the downtown areas for the suburbs. I think you all, as many others, would fondly recall how when they were children, they would have gone to the downtown as part of their shopping trip with their parents. And it was a special occasion. We believed that the challenge was, in effect, to rethink downtown retailing in the era of the suburban shopping center. Our first downtown project was Fanueil Hall Marketplace in Boston, which opened in 1976. This project was almost impossible to lease because of the lack of confidence in downtown retailing on the part of local and national retailers. And in fact, we could not find a single financial institution in the city or region of Boston who had put $1 into the Fanueil Hall Marketplace project. And this was indicative of the kind of lack of confidence that was felt locally in Boston, and that, for that matter, I think in many other cities across the country with regard to the prospect for revitalizing retailing in the downtown. With Fanueil Hall's almost immediate success, we followed with a project in downtown Philadelphia in 1977, and then a project in Santa Monica's downtown, Harbor Place in Baltimore in 1980. And these have then been followed by downtown projects in New York City, in St. Louis, New Orleans, Milwaukee, Miami, Jacksonville, Denver, Washington, D.C., and recently we opened a project in downtown Baltimore across from the Harbor Place project. And in addition to our work here in Portland, we are actually under construction in Seattle, Atlanta, and Phoenix. Since Fanueil Hall Marketplace opened in 1976, almost 2/3 of our new retail projects have been opened in center city locations. We continue to build suburban shopping centers, but we now know that while suburban shopping centers serve an important function, they are not a substitute for the downtown as the central marketplace for most of our urban areas. I listed a number of cities, and we're not involved in those cities by accident. And in many of the cities, such as Portland here, we only had won the right to develop in those downtowns after intense competitions, reflecting that the development industry as a whole has in recent years come to realize that downtowns represent a major potential. Following the success of Fanueil Hall in the mid-1970s, we undertook in our company an intensive study to understand why Fanueil Hall had succeeded and to determine specifically what kinds of criteria and conditions needed to exist for downtown projects and specifically projects focusing on retail. And while we recognize that no two cities and no two markets were alike, we believe that certain conditions needed to exist for a downtown project to succeed, especially a project whose focus would be retailing. We came to Portland because we believed that these conditions existed here. We believed that Portland represented one of the best opportunities in America for the Rouse Company to pursue its interest in the revitalization of downtown retailing. In fact, Portland was very near the top of our list in our studies when they were completed in 1981. Having been involved in Portland now for 5 years, beginning in 1982 with the city's request for proposals, I think that we all at the Rouse Company feel that we were correct in our assessment of Portland as a wonderful opportunity for our company. In fact, Portland, in my mind, symbolizes the best of what we hoped for in meeting the conditions which we originally set forth as necessary for successful downtown projects. And at the risk of stating the obvious, let me highlight what I mean. To begin with, the Portland area with its 1.3 million people presents a market of size, income potential, and diversity which we believe and know is necessary for downtown retailing and downtown projects to succeed. Access to downtown Portland by automobile and public transit is unparalleled for any city of its size, and in fact, I think it's unparalleled for any city of any size. Portland has a history of strong, successful downtown retailing, and unlike many of the downtowns in which we have worked, has maintained in downtown a strong retail presence. Between 1972 and 1982, retailing in the central business district of Portland increased by approximately 6% annually. And if you take the top 38 cities with populations of over 1 million people, that growth rate is higher than that for 32 of the 38 cities. And in many of those cities during that same period, there in fact was a decline in downtown retailing. Portland's downtown in general terms has maintained its position as the commercial, the social, and cultural center of the region. And this position continues to be enhanced. By 1990, when Pioneer Place opens, almost 100,000 people will be working in the downtown area. Also, downtown Portland, unlike many other cities, has a close-in resident population. And in fact, when one explores the data, the downtown is a logical place to shop for a large segment of the market. And this condition is being further enhanced with the new residential construction, which is occurring now right in the downtown area. Our experience with projects in the downtown, especially projects like Harbor Place and Fanueil Hall, indicates that visitors for business and pleasure are a very important segment of the market for downtown retailing. Already there are a substantial number of visitors to Portland every year. I believe the number is something around 1 million. And this number is expected to grow substantially, especially with the completion of the convention center, also scheduled approximately at the same time that Pioneer Place will be opening. And Portland, as has been the case in every city in which we have developed, has a record of successful center city renewal. We've in effect learned that retailing in effect cannot typically lead center city renewal, but in effect has to follow. And in a very real way, the Pioneer Place project is sort of the last major piece of a puzzle in downtown revitalization in Portland, a revitalization that's been underway, as you all know, for many years. And the fact is that without the results of the work that you all have done over these years, we would not have been able to attract Saks to downtown Portland, and we would not be able to attract the many other fine merchants which we hope to attract to the Pioneer Place project. And with respect to Saks, as you all know, this will be the first Saks department store in the Northwest, and is only one of 5 new stores that Saks will build anywhere in the United States of America over the next 5 years. Lastly, with respect to the conditions which we had set forth, and in my view as important or possibly more important than any of the other conditions, we have found that projects such as Pioneer Place cannot succeed without strong, competent city government and without the support of the city's key business leaders. And I've said before here, talking with many of the people in the business community and in government, that more so than in any city in which I personally have worked, I have found that these 2 ingredients, competent city government and support of the city's key leadership, exist simultaneously here and at a very high level. Well, on the subject of local leadership, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the public and private leaders here in Portland for their vision, understanding, and as you all know, patience. I said yesterday as part of our groundbreaking that I do not know of another city in which we have worked anywhere in the United States where the kind of trauma and changes which impacted on the Pioneer Place project could have occurred and we still would have proceeded to a groundbreaking. In any other place where we worked, there would not have been the understanding and vision and long-term outlook which would have allowed us to bring a project of this scale and complexity to a groundbreaking. And in this regard, I especially want to express my appreciation to the Portland Development Commission, to Pat LaCrosse, and his outstanding associates, Larry Deli and Chris Kopka, for sticking by us, and I mean sticking by us through some very complex and some very challenging times. And notwithstanding this positive and impressive list of favorable factors, all cities do have their problems, and Portland is no exception, especially with respect to the retailing situation. For example, while Nordstrom and Meyer & Frank continue to be successful, since the time that the request for proposals was initiated 5-6 years ago, as you all know, JCPenney has closed, and the Frederick and Nelson store has closed, and this is the wrong kind of momentum and clearly makes the job a little bit more difficult. We at the Rouse Company are working hard to live up to the trust that you have placed with us. We believe that our downtown projects have worked because we have worked hard to understand the communities in which we work. We believe that each of our projects are well-designed, well-leased, well-operated, as intensely human places oriented to their respective markets. For certain, Pioneer Place is one of our most ambitious urban projects. Encompassing almost 4 city blocks, it's the largest project in terms of site size that we've undertaken in any city. When completed, the 2 phases of the project will include almost 1.25 million square feet of space. The first phase is 800,000 square feet of space, including the Saks department store, the 4-level retail pavilion, a 15-story office building, which will be built on top of the Saks store, and an 8-level parking garage. Our investment in just the first phase, which will open in 1990, will be almost $115 million, and this figure is likely to reach $200 million by the time we complete the project and the development of the 4th block. Now, what will Pioneer Place mean to Portland? And of course, to make predictions or forecasts on any subject is kind of hazardous these days. And I know that the press will love what I'm about ready to do, and my staff will shoot me. In fact, they already told me yesterday when I showed them these notes, you can't say that. You can't, that can't happen, that may not happen. But notwithstanding that, and recognizing that I'll be back here in Portland in 2 years, accountable, let me tell you what I think it'll mean and what I would predict with respect to the project. First, I predict that Pioneer Place will open on May 3rd, not the 2nd, not the 4th. On May 3rd, 1990, the ribbon will be cut at 12 noon. It will, of course, be a beautiful sunny day. If any of you have any doubts, you look at what the weather was like 2 days ago, look at what it was like yesterday when we had a groundbreaking, and look at what it was like today. I was saying to Pat LaCrosse, in all of my history in the company, 20 years, we've never had a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting in which it was not bright and sunny on the day in which it occurred. Over 75 merchants, or approximately 85% of the first phase retail, will open for business on that day. The remaining merchants, 100% of the space, including Saks, which will open a little bit later than we do, will open by the Christmas selling season of 1990. Approximately 50% of the merchants will be small, independent merchants from the Portland market area. And the other 50% of the merchants will be what we refer to as major national merchants. In the first year, and this is where our operating people began to cringe, in the first year, the retailers of Pioneer Place will generate over $75 million in sales. This represents approximately $375 per square foot in sales, and for any of you all who are familiar with retailing numbers, you'll know that that's an extraordinarily high number. And in fact, I would say that there is not a single suburban shopping center in the Portland area that is achieving sales levels of that scale. Approximately 4 million people will shop at Pioneer Place in the first year that it is open. And again, I would predict that 50%, half of the people who shop at Pioneer Place, will have driven by at least one other major shopping facility on the way to get to it. Approximately 15% of the shoppers will be visitors to Portland, and the new convention center will provide a critically important asset in this regard. I predict that the wonderful atrium at Pioneer Place will be a favorite gathering place for downtown workers during lunch hour and after work. I believe that because of its design and overall ambience, Pioneer Place will become one of the city's major visitor attractions, adding to the already growing list of special places in downtown Portland, such as the Courthouse Square, Chinatown, and the Performing Arts Center, the Yamhill Historic District, and the newly developed waterfront area. If what occurs in other cities occurs here, I think it's safe to predict that Pioneer Place will stimulate other major development along 3rd and 4th Street and in the area around the project. And I predict that an early project that will be stimulated by Pioneer Place will in fact be the second phase of Pioneer Place, and I would predict that the second phase of Pioneer Place on the 4th block will break ground before the first phase of the project is completed. Again, if our lesson in other cities is correct, I believe that the Pioneer Place will act as a stimulus for retail activity in the downtown area. The addition of Saks will clearly reverse the trend of closing department stores in the downtown. And moreover, if our experience in other cities repeats itself here in Portland, we'll find that stores in the downtown area will extend their operating hours in order to take advantage of after-work hour retailing activity. Pioneer Place will add new ridership to light rail. And again, a very high number, but I would forecast that approximately 50% of all the shoppers to Pioneer Place will walk or come by light rail or bus, which is a very high percentage in terms of the way mass transit is used for downtown projects, even downtown projects where we have been involved. And already I think this is the fact that the light rail ridership is actually higher now on weekends than it is during the weekday in terms of the numbers of people already attracted to the downtown. The presence of Pioneer Place and people it will attract will be an important source of support for the Performing Arts Center and other cultural activities in downtown. And while the focus on Pioneer Place has been the retail aspects of the undertaking, I also predict that the office building, notwithstanding the current vacancy levels in downtown Portland, will open in just 26 months with over 50% of the space already committed. We announced, I think as you know, yesterday at the groundbreaking, our first major commitment from the law firm of Tonkin, Torp, Gale, and Marmaduke and Booth. Finally, I predict that the people in the end in Portland will forget completely who developed Pioneer Place, and hopefully forget completely who made these predictions, and will view it as a place that is part of and belongs to the city, and this is as it should be. Well, that's far enough out on a limb to climb with respect to predictions. We will work hard to achieve these results. It's not all speculative. Results similar to these have been achieved in other cities. And I think, like in other cities, we inevitably will receive more credit for whatever success is achieved than we deserve. We are, in fact, in Portland, as we are in most other cities, the Johnny-come-latelys to those cities. And with or without the Rouse Company, credit for the great city Portland has become belongs to many of you out there in the audience and will not belong to us. You all have provided the vision, the leadership, and the resources which have made Portland a really great town, and I use the word town intentionally and with affection. At this point, I know that for many of you, we are outsiders. However, you have made us feel at home, and as I've said, I'm an unabashed fan of your city. In addition to all the very specific conditions which I have cited as the basis for success, we've found those conditions here, but we have also found the people of Portland to be warm, friendly, with a love of the outdoors, a love of good fun, a commitment to hard work for the good of the community as a whole. And we look forward to becoming a part of your community, and I can assure you we're here for the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike Spear. Dave will be setting up our microphone out in front. Again, I invite your questions from that forum, or if you prefer, written questions. Our first question today is from our board host, Bill Wyatt.
First, let me add my congratulations to the Rouse Company and to the Development Commission and the city for what is really a remarkable accomplishment. I happen to have a copy of the speech. I was flashing through it to make sure that all the things he said were written down, and I assure you they are. And I know that the club's unofficial honorary statistician, Mr. LaCrosse, will be back here in 2 years to fill us in on the rate of success for these predictions. My question is essentially this. You alluded to it during your speech, and I think it has been said that the law of the West, and perhaps that same law applies to some of the success enjoyed by the Rouse Company, is that private dollars follow public dollars. And I think clearly in the case of the Pioneer Place project, we see an outstanding example of that. In some kind of priority fashion, could you talk a bit about what you consider to be the most significant public investments that could be made in downtown to sustain all the attributes which you described earlier?
Well, our experience with downtown projects would really suggest that we use the word critical mass. In other words, what we're doing is a piece of that critical mass. Performing Arts Center, the waterfront, all the other things that are happening are parts of that critical mass. And I think that anything that the city can do to add to the generators of traffic, things that will attract people to downtown, whether it be more retail that's competitive with our retail, is a positive. To the extent that the waterfront continues to be developed, to the extent that major attractions that would draw people to the downtown along the waterfront are developed, that's all a positive. So anything that can be added that's appealing to the people in the region as a whole and enhances the purpose of the trip to the downtown is all a positive. And then finally, I guess I would say, and I think this is an area where cities are oftentimes deficient, is marketing. It's not enough simply to know that what you have is appealing. And I've seen cities invest tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into making the downtown the kind of place that people want to be, but have done an inadequate job in letting both the people in their own region and the people in a larger region and the people across America know that their downtown is the kind of a quality downtown that can be appealing to both visitors and to the attraction of business. So it's an area I gather, I understand that you all are beginning to focus on now, but I would strongly encourage that you all understand the really unique and beautiful downtown that you have produced and seek ways to have others, both here in your own market as well as in the market across this country, understand what you have accomplished. Other cities have done this in remarkable ways. A place like Baltimore, for example, was able to turn around its image almost completely through marketing. Now, you can only do that if you've got the goods. And many cities try to do this. They don't have the goods, and ultimately it fails. In this case, you've got the goods, and I think that a marketing effort of that magnitude could pay real dividends.
Selena Autumn, City Club member. The Rouse Company is well known for its Art in the Marketplace program. I don't know if it's still going on, but do you predict that there will be an Art in the Marketplace program for this project? And do you anticipate using artists, as we have done here in both private and public development, along with the architects for the building itself?
There will be an Arts in the Marketplace program. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, we have a staff at our headquarters, and we have staff at each of our projects whose only job is to find ways to relate our projects to the arts as those arts exist or as those arts may be stimulated in the specific communities in which we are located. We feel that this is important. We feel it's one of the aspects that builds allegiance, that attracts people to the downtown projects. So we will have such a program here. We will have staff here who will work with the various cultural and art institutions to make the project really a special home for the arts. And the building itself does not have that involved in it, but the opening and the operation of it will clearly include it. Yes?
Yes, my name is Ryan Lawrence, City Club member. Myself and I think others in the city have felt that the Rouse Company has held the city hostage to a certain extent with this project and not completing it or starting it until now. How do you respond to that, and how do you respond to dealing with the image that many people have of the company in that sense?
I was asked whether I heard all that. No, I didn't hear anything.
I don't mean that as sour grapes, but I think that it is a concern, and some of that is not true, I'm sure. But
well, I think, I mean, the really point of the question, did everyone hear the question in the audience? The question was really asking how we felt about a feeling that exists to some extent here in the Portland community, that the Rouse Company has held the community hostage, I think was the phrase, to the project through the delay of the project. And I think that it's a feeling that I clearly understand. I don't feel that we, the Rouse Company, have held the city hostage. I think that For those of you all familiar with the events that occurred, that these were basically, the project has in fact been delayed. There is no question about that. And there have had to, the phasing of it had to be adjusted, the timing of it had to be adjusted, the arrangements with the city had to be adjusted. The reason for this were really events that were out of our control and out of the city's control. And in fact, what happened is this project was ready to start. We could have had this groundbreaking 12 to 18 months ago. And just about the time that we were ready to go, the Frederick and Nelson store, which was the second anchor for the project, was sold. That, in effect, really put us back to square one with respect to the design of the retail portion of the project. And we literally had, on the day that they announced Frederick and Nelson was sold, had completely completed all of our drawings. It put about $1 million into architecture and engineering, and all of that was just virtually burned. And we had to start over, and there was delay. And it's that patience that I was referring to before. Now, in a larger sense, I can also say that the process that has occurred here is not different than what has occurred in many other cities, that these projects are extraordinarily complex. And while one looks back to 1979 to 1988 as being a 9-year period, and that's a long period of time from the time all this was first started, I think you would find that in most cities, the projects like this and of this importance have taken even longer than that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, here's a question that reflects a slightly different point of view. Is Rouse a public company? And if not, when are you going to, and when can we buy?
I'd like to start in reverse now. We are a public company. We are traded over the counter and have been a public company for a very long number of years, and I think it's the fact that we are the only major real estate development company that is still a public company. Typically, major real estate development companies of any scale are private companies, not public companies, and I'm happy to say that the Rouse Company stock, as of yesterday, was almost exactly where it was on October 18th. Or I guess not the 18th, because that was a Sunday, so on the 15th.
I'm Charles Sykes, a member of the club. One of the early mall developments on the West Coast was in Fresno in California. And I assume that you're familiar with the career of that one, which has, at least the last time I was down there, is almost a disaster with the core shops moving out to outer areas. And I don't know whether that experience has been repeated in other cities, but I wonder if in that experience there's any lesson for Portland as to things to avoid in order to ensure the success or the continuing success of our own projects here.
Well, I think that there is a lesson, and there are many projects both in downtowns and not in downtowns involving retailing which stagnate and go into decline. In fact, many of these major regional shopping centers, which were caused real problems for the downtowns, today are experiencing some of their own problems. Our company has as a business buying shopping centers which are sort of in the condition that you're describing and working with them. I think the lesson in this is to recognize that retailing is a very volatile, very flexible, and very changing industry, and that oftentimes today's hot trend is not a hot trend 5 years from now, that oftentimes retailers who are in projects and today are not the hot retailers 5 years from now. We know that some of what we consider are the hot retailers being brought into projects today didn't even exist 5 years ago or 7 years ago or 10 years ago. The importance that we feel this indicates is the real need to operate these projects in a way that recognizes that this exists, to keep them fresh, to be prepared to change concepts, change retailers, and to make sure that the project on a continuing basis is operated in a way that's both sensitive to the market and is also sensitive to what is happening in retailing in terms of trends. I say to the market because the demographics across America are changing too. And for example, as the demographics become older, you need to be sensitive to what that means as a profile of the shopper changes. And we put a great deal of effort into this. In many ways, we view ourselves not as developers, but as retailers. And I think we've been successful because we have not allowed our projects to become stagnant, and we have been prepared to make the kinds of changes that are necessary to keep them fresh.
I'm Dick Ritz, a member. I wonder if you would jump ahead to the second phase of your project and comment on how you view the relationship of the hotel that I believe is still projected to the light rail and the convention center, and what your reaction would be if other hotel projects are inspired by the convention center. Would you continue with your hotel plans, or would you have second thoughts?
Well, I think with the convention center, it's inevitable that there will be additional demand for hotels, and I suspect some of them will be in the downtown and some of them will be over in the immediate area of the convention center. Ultimately, there can be too many hotels, and I think in large measure it depends, who's out of the ground first. I mean, to the extent that we're able to obtain a hotel commitment early on and are able to get underway with a hotel, then we would proceed. We would not be discouraged because someone else or other parties might ultimately build other hotels in downtown or in the area of the convention center. On the other hand, if we were unable to obtain early commitments to a hotel and other hotel projects in the intervening period were being developed either downtown or by the convention center, it could indeed affect whether or not we were able to attract a hotel or whether or not a hotel could be part of that portion of the project. But from a city standpoint, it seems to me that the city's interest is in attracting hotels, particularly with respect to the convention center, and that they are and ought to be working on attracting them wherever they can get them fastest and first. And if that means it poses problems for us or some other site, that's a problem I think we're going to have to cope with. Ultimately, that site is a valuable site. It's well located, whether it's for a hotel or some other use. I think it'll become an important part of the Pioneer Place project, and I think as you all probably know, we can't simply do anything we want to on that parcel. Our ability to use that parcel is very strictly controlled by the city, so if it's not a hotel, there's going to be, it'll be something else that the city feels is an important addition to the city.
The founder of your company was a strong believer in the importance of critical mass. Is it true that reduction of the original size of the Pioneer Place project has created problems for its success?
Well, I think that we're talking here specifically about the retail, and if I were to have my choice between building the retail as we originally had planned it with 2 department stores or building it with 1 department store as we presently are doing, I would clearly choose to have more critical mass than have the other department store. But notwithstanding that, we are confident that with the Saks department store, which is, we've said, it will be unique for this region, in combination with the other, ultimately there'll be somewhere around 90 additional small stores, that there will be adequate critical mass to allow this project to work successfully. Again, with respect to that last block, it is also possible, and there are conversations underway, which might ultimately include another department store in that particular location. So we are disappointed we were not able to bring both department stores forward simultaneously, but we are also very satisfied, or we wouldn't be going forward, that the combination of Saks and what we will be doing is more than adequate in size. I might say, just to give you a sense of this, we talk about Harbor Place in Baltimore. The first phase of this project, which will include almost 150,000 square feet of our space and 60,000 square feet of the Saks space, that's 210,000 square feet. Harbor Place is only 137,000 square feet. Fanueil Hall opened up with its first phase, was under 100,000 square feet. The projects in Denver, Washington, Jacksonville, are all New Orleans, St. Louis. In fact, the 210,000 square feet of pure retail space, this will be one of the largest initial offerings of retail space in any of the downtown projects we've developed. So we're quite confident it has adequate critical mass.
I'm Brian Scott, a member of the club. This audience for the last several weeks has been listening to a lot of gloom and doom about America's economy and the end of America's spending spree. And I wonder if our economy is going to tighten and all the spending we've been doing in the last decades is to end. What's that going to do to the critical mass of these giant retailing machines that are working so well and are so exciting right now?
Well, we don't necessarily share in the doom and gloom. There was a lot of doom and gloom around that particular subject that came forward after the stock market crash about how consumer spending was going to be adversely affected and massive turn down in Christmas sales and so forth and so on. We did not share in that view at the time, believing that for most of the American consumers, how they spent was not going to be seriously affected by what the stock market did. And I dare say, if each of you in the room think about it, I'm not sure to what extent your day-to-day consumption patterns in terms of dresses, merchandise, gifts, and other things were affected by what happened on October 19th. It's certainly not, maybe it did for the first week or two, just because you felt down if you happened to be in the stock market. But our sales have continued to grow at almost exactly the same rate they were growing monthly before that occurred. The market is growing, the population is growing, trends are changing. And while there may be recessions and there may be other occurrences, we don't see it affecting us. We were sharing with some analysts yesterday the fact that our portfolio of shopping centers over the last 10 years has grown at a compounded rate of 15% per year for 10 years straight. And if you think about what's occurred in the last 10 years, I mean, we've had a recession, we've had an energy crisis, we've had double-digit inflation, we've had single-digit, we've had 3% inflation, 12% inflation, and I think that there's a lot more resiliency in terms of the retail market and sales than analysts looking at other segments of the market tend to believe.
John Schleining, member. Most of your urban projects are characterized by festival market connotation, which is a destination for a lot of tourist and other kinds of activities. Initially, the city was after a more urban sort of image and a more upscale, serious downtown type of retail. Where do you stand now on that, and what can we expect to see in the center that would distinguish it from the other more festival marketplace atmospheres?
Well, that's a very good question. The kinds of projects we have built in downtowns are really essentially of two types. One is what we call the specialty marketplace, or people have called it festival retailing. It's heavily oriented to visitors to the region. It's much more oriented to kind of fun and entertainment. And the other kind of projects that we have built in the downtowns are not festival marketplace. They're not on the waterfront. These are projects that we've built in Milwaukee and Santa Monica, Philadelphia, Washington, Denver. In fact, about half of the projects we've done in the downtown are specialty marketplace festival kinds of projects, and the other half are the more serious retailing-oriented projects. This is clearly a project that will be oriented toward more to serious retailing. This is not going to be a waterfront-oriented historic building, festival marketplace. This is to really complement and supplement the kind of serious retailing that is already represented by Meyer and Frank, by Nordstrom, and some of the other fine stores that are in downtown Portland. Now, what will distinguish it is also an important question. And you remember one of my outlandish predictions was that 50% of the people who shop there would drive by at least one other major shopping facility in order to get there to shop. Well, they're not going to do that if all it is a replication of what they can buy in those shopping centers that are more convenient to where they begin their trip. And so a major challenge with Pioneer Place, as it has been in other projects in downtowns, is to figure out the mix of merchants, the way you operate it, creating a design environment that makes it special in the marketplace. We call this in our company affectionately a sense of place, creating a sense of place. Now, part of that's created through the design of the space. I think you'll find that the retail atrium will be unlike any other space that exists in the market. Part of it is achieved through the way we operate it, relating it to the arts in the marketplace kind of program. And most importantly, part of the answer is in the kinds of shops that we attract. And there's be a heavy emphasis on attracting high-quality national retailers, but there will also be a real emphasis on attracting very special, unique shops from not only Portland, but the greater Northwest, shops that are not replicated in the regional shopping centers, where in most regional shopping centers you can find the same stores in one center or another center. Yes?
Ray Polani, a member of the City Club. Mr. Spear, I think you indicated earlier in one of your predictions, you might want to regret that, that probably about 50% of the people that will come to the place will come walking or by transit. And given the success of transit in downtown Portland, notably the light rail, which surprised, I'm sure, a lot of people, and noting also the mentioning of the graying of the country, is the Rouse Company prepared to assist in additional transit development for the downtown? I'm thinking specifically of the West Side Light Rail and the North and South Light Rail, which are in planning stages but have encountered financial difficulties in the last few years.
I think if you mean assist in the same way that others in the room here as part of a business community would assist, I think the answer is yes. If you mean assist in the sense of providing some special financial support to it directly, the answer would be no.
Alan Costley, City Club member. Sort of a follow-up to what Mr. Polani asked. That prediction that 50% of the customers of the retail portion of your center would arrive by public transit, is that a phenomenon that you experience at any other Rouse project, or for that matter in any other city that you're familiar with? And how does that difference, the dependency on public transit for your customer base, how does that affect the planning of this project or the kind of retail mix you have?
Let me also be clear that I'd said by public transit or walk. So, I mean, the first component of the 50% will be from people who work in downtown, and I don't know exactly what it would be, but it wouldn't surprise me to find that of that 50%, 15%, not 15% of the 50, but 15% could very well be people who are working in the downtown. So it's not, the whole load of that 50% isn't on people coming in from the suburbs. It is not, we do have projects which are much lower than that. Obviously, most of them are, but there are places that we've developed that are higher. In Philadelphia, for example, close to 70 to 75% of all the people who shop in the downtown Philadelphia project, which is a serious shop. I mean, it is one that's anchored by 3 department stores, retail, serious retailing. And approximately 3/4 of all the people shopping there are coming either by foot or by public transit. Now, it is the only project that has as highly developed a public transit system immediately connected into the project as compared to Portland. So there is precedent. It's an aggressive number, but it's not without precedent. And in fact, I think the city has recently had projections made, and my 50% was actually lower than what I think some of the transportation experts are predicting.
Mr. Spear, our mayor told you yesterday how happy all of us are that your company is here and how happy we are that you are here, and with what eagerness we look forward to the next couple of years and the May 3rd date, was it, that we will all be back to cut that ribbon with you. Thank you for being with us today. We are adjourned. What do you have in New York? I didn't realize you were